Hey, it's good to be here again. I have something to share, and this is something we haven't talked about before, but it could change your day and it could even alter your life. Have you ever noticed, maybe more than once, there might be two people who go through the exact same thing, and one person is totally crushed by it, is negative. It just brings everybody else down too. It's almost as if the bad thing that happened to them has to bring everybody else down. Another person goes through the same thing and actually not only kind of makes it through, but actually inspires everybody who's looking on and watching it. I've always wanted to be that second kind of person. It's not easy. It's not easy to just press a button and say, "Hey, choose to have a," I want to reflect Jesus to everybody. So have a completely positive attitude, Rick. Anything you do here, I'm just going to press this button, or I'm going to have something installed into my brain that makes me endlessly positive and happy, no matter what happens. Paul says that whether I live or die, he praises the Lord. It just, I remember I remember my father-in-law when he was sick. He passed away many years ago. He was a wonderful example of someone who was at peace with God, and he just, even through his sickness, he just would joke and laugh. Even up to the day he died, he was laughing, poking jokes, teasing his daughters who were taking it so seriously, naturally, because they loved him so much. And it always stuck with me that he had wow, the very same situation, two people will react totally differently. I've noticed on ball fields, we play a lot of softball, and I don't know how many can relate to that, but just think of something in your world that didn't go the way you wanted it to go. Have you ever noticed there would be teams who would, a call by the umpire would go against them, and a player would just become ferociously upset, almost as if his honor had been insulted, angry and arguing with the ump. Another person, another member of a team, and I have to take my hat off to our guys on our men's family team, would save face for the umpire and just be a little, kind of look at him a little bit, maybe later between innings, and kind of check, and the guy would kind of plead guilty. I got that wrong. And you saved the day, and you actually brought that person, you showed Jesus to that person because you were truthful that, you kind of, like, I remember one time after a game, an umpire came out to the parking lot, a late night game, and he was admitting that he had called against our kind of made some calls at second base, I think it was, but made a call or two against our team. And he admitted that he had kind of done it out of cowardice because the other team was filled with hotheads, as he I don't know what word he used, but hotheads. And he feared that team more than us. So he would make a borderline call against us. So he's sort of apologizing, feeling guilty. But in a way, it's a backhanded compliment because it made me realize, oh, he sees the nature of Jesus in the men on our team, my sons. We always had as our aim to be very competitive men, very good athletes, and we did win a lot of trophies, but to do it in a way that honored God, because real men can be kind. Real men can show humility and patience. But I wanted to encourage you because there's a key that I can sum it up into a little bumper sticker almost. Flexibility leads to joy and happiness. Oh, the sun came out. It's coming through the woods over there. I'll just show it to you here. See that? I'm going to get a drink of soda. Does that show up on here, or does it blow out the screen? I'll bring it back to me. You could almost say flexibility equals happiness to the degree that you and I can become flexible and loose and light-hearted. We're going to be able to weather so many more storms because for one, it's like if you drive, you know how to save gas, fuel, and the brake pads and everything. You know how to do that, right? For one, if you see a stop sign 500 feet away, you coast to a stop. You don't have to have the accelerator up to the last moment and then put the brakes on, because that wastes gasoline and it wears out the brakes. You can use the brakes only when necessary and very lightly, and you can use the accelerator when necessary, but have the road conditions work for you. And so many people in life will have the pedal to the metal, be intense, whether the situation calls for it or not. Basically, you're overpaying. You're throwing a lot of energy into mental energy, anguish, worry. And did you ever notice how physically it affects you? How you can have a tight stomach, or maybe a nervous tick, or an ulcer, or you just feel more tired. It wears you out. Did you ever use a lot of energy on some intense discussion, even if it wasn't an argument, but just some intense discussion, that it fries your brain. I don't think our brains weren't meant to be that way. They weren't meant to be used as with us carrying the whole weight of winning an argument or making a point, or even if we're right. Did you know that it's scientifically true that somebody who's negative all the time, or someone who's light and joyful and positive, that there are scans, there are medical instruments that can actually pick that up, it shows a difference in the appearance of the brain. We're literally deciding, we're programming our own minds. In our minds, by what our daily habits are. If you choose flexibility and forgiveness and ease and sort of like just forever get rid of the wrong kind of perfectionism and rigidity. I mean, perfectionism in the sense of wanting to be just like Jesus is okay. But I just mean that's more of a perfection of love and patience and mercy. Those are the things that we want to strive for. But if we're the kind of person that if something goes a little wrong, we're upset and everybody has to know it, we're dooming ourselves, because we're actually driving away people who could love you. We're putting out a reputation, as we're sending signals. Hey, don't hang around me because I'm touchy, I'm expensive, I'm a high maintenance person to be around. And people, ironically, who live that way and are very rigid and aren't flexible and won't be lighthearted, they need love. That's probably one reason they're like that. It's like a cycle. They drive away the very people who could help them. Even if it were just a faking thing, if you were to go a whole year just being lighthearted, cheerful, almost you can't be perturbed easily. You're trusting God. You don't know how it's all going to work out, but you just love God. You love everybody. You would, even if you were to just be able to fake that for a while, you would get so many benefits. You and I would, because God's principles work, even if we were just to act that way. In fact, you know what's a sad thing? I heard about an actor who had to play a dark part in a movie, just like some kind of villain, and it was a very intense experience being on the set. So he took all sorts of medications so he could go to sleep at night, sedatives, and he wound up accidentally overdosing and passed away. And it's a shame, because just the very act of being that way in front of the camera all the time affected him 24 hours a day as a person. So our habits, we have to practice lightness and joy. If it seems impossible to read God's word and it says, rejoice in the Lord always, or fear is useless, what is needed is faith, or do not worry about nothing, pray about everything. If that seems real far away, that's because we're human and we do tend to worry. I tend to worry if I can't tell I can't control the future. I get concerned about things I can't control. With our big family, there's always somebody traveling, flying somewhere, taking a long road trip, and I just can't control. Now that we have grandchildren, so many things happening, grandchildren, I just can't control everything. I can't. I just can't. I have to trust God. I already had to with a big family, and even with one child, you have to do that. But I've learned that I can decide ahead of time that, kind of like Job, though he slay me, I will trust in you. Like being happy, I'm going to trust God. I'm going to be light. And I have found, believe it or not, that it has worked. Like cooperating with God's grace, you have to put your will, you have to decide, I'm going to be a light person. I'm going to be flexible. One way to look at it, think of it as a budget. We all are so human. We need sleep. We need rest. If you have only, let's say we each have, I don't know, how many hours? Let's say you I don't get 8 hours of sleep, but let's say you were to get 8 hours of sleep. Let's say you have 16 units of energy every day, and each one is like $1,000. So you have 16, each hour of your day is $1,000 of value. So you have $16,000 a day, each of us. If you use up a lot of it on some early morning intense worries or discussions, or you get into it with somebody at the store, maybe the line was too slow, or this person in front of you honked at you, or somebody, the sales lady at Walmart, you might have used 4,000 of it within 15 minutes, or maybe not 50. You couldn't do all those bad things in 15 minutes, but let's say you used 8,000 of it within the first hour of the day. By 10 o'clock, you're already in debt, and you don't have much to carry you across the finish line. So if your kids or your wife, your husband need more out of you, or something rises, you're just a basket case. You have nothing. You've got to make it all about you. Oh, everybody stay away. So if if mama ain't happy, no, ain't nobody happy, as they say. Or, in other words, you get to control like a thermostat your whole environment, especially a mother or or a parent or dad, but mainly mothers, or grandmothers or aunts, anybody who's around. Did you ever get a real soothing, kind nurse when you were in a vulnerable situation? Maybe just your normal checkup, or you're even going to the dentist, versus somebody who's kind of like just going through the motions, or they're kind of crabby, they're kind of abrupt. It's very hard to bring up vulnerable situations to people who seem impatient. So we're supposed to live by the golden rule: give and treat others the way you would want to be treated. So what I try to do is think, someday I'm going to need mercy. Someday I'm going to need a special favor. I'm going to try to give that to everybody, like a baker's dozen, a 13th donut. I'm going to try to just give everybody a little extra kindness and love. And I have noticed it's very contagious. Like in my family, especially as a dad or mom, especially if you're one of the leaders, or even anybody though, even a kid, even a 4-year-old. But if you set a tone, a certain standard, other people compare that with the way they're doing things. And if you're kind of getting a better deal out of your $16,000 a day, and you're somehow lasting, and you have leftover in the evening, and you're fresh and you're loving people, that makes them wonder, how did they get such a good deal with their 16,000? I used mine up early on a couple of squabbles here, and I got overwhelmed with this, and the sink overflowed, and the toilet doesn't work, and just, in other words, we learn by imitation. By the way, that's one reason on the Fam Team website we're making videos about how did you. It's kind of the theme of how did you, or more actually, how did God help you get through this, get through that. And that's why I'm doing that here on Safe at Home, because a lot of people, that'll be a lot of practical things, like how did you handle a big family? How did you homeschool? How did you make all these pies for Thanksgiving? I think last year they made, Mary Elizabeth and Kathy, and with the help of other family members, made 45 pies. I think with Paul helped. Believe it or not, Paul, our oldest, likes to make pies at Thanksgiving time, a certain kind. I think it's that kind that's really chocolate, very heavily chocolate. I can't, it's too many calories. If I'm going to stay in training with the guys at this age, I have to not eat much, maybe just a sliver. What's the kind is it a mud pie? What's the kind that's real heavily chocolate? There's a name they have. I'll let you know if you watched Fam Team, it's probably on one of the videos. But I wanted to do videos for Safe at Home that are like how to survive away from depression. We're all prone to depression. I was talking to someone today who was so depressed that he was thinking, I just can't get out of it. I just can't. It's not somebody I regularly pray with, so I can't. But it's just something I just kept saying. Well, lately I've helped this person, and it's like going through different rooms. I said, there are 100 rooms in this 100 room mansion, let's say, and the worries are all in one room, and you spend all of your time in this room because you want to fix these things. But there are 99 other beautiful rooms that you could go through and rejoice and thank God, and they're clean and beautiful, and the sun's shining through, and they smell fresh. So I just said, you have to go through into the other rooms. That's what I have to do for survival, because Jesus tells us to literally make a commitment not to worry. So to me, what I'm saying about being flexible, flexibility leads to happiness, lightheartedness leads to you having more of that 16,000 left at the end of the day. Well, I think a key is to just force yourself out of that room of worry or tension or heaviness, or especially if that room has different pieces of furniture. One is the self-pity chair. You might spend an hour in the self-pity chair. You might spend an hour in the fear chair, another hour over here. Well, your brain is getting formed so that you think that's the whole house. You think that one room is the whole house. Then you find out, you go into the other rooms, and there are other people wandering around happily in those rooms. Well, I thought I was limited to this room. Remember the story about the bear? He was in a zoo, pacing 9 paces, and the zoo cages aren't that big. And people felt sorry for the bear as it was older, and they had a fundraiser, and they purchased its freedom. So they took the bear to the open wilderness area, and big moment, drum roll, they let it go, and wanted to see it dance happily off into the distance and live its life in the great openness. You know what it did? Out in that openness, it just kept going back and forth 9 paces. And as I heard someone say, it was because the bars of the cage were in the bear's mind. So I wanted you to know that we have to go into other rooms. You know what has helped me do that? Being a dad. When you're a dad or a mother, or even anybody taking care of people or being around people, When you're a Christian, you're being watched, studied. You're actually setting up the culture, the atmosphere. And that could be scary because you might think, oh man, I've already probably failed up to this point in life. But see, you haven't. If you've been following Jesus, he'll use all of that. Because if you were a little too heavy, too negative, or you spent time in the self-pity chair in the worry room out of the 100-room mansion, you can actually be a walking testimony. Because if you would just start spending every hour, I'm going to go into one of these other 100 rooms. I've got 99 other rooms I could visit. Hey, so what? And then the other part could say, no, you can't be happy unless this is solved. Now, until this is solved, I'm staying in this room. And the biggest thing I have found is not all of your problems will never be solved. You'll always have some unfinished business in that room. You just have to decide to be happy before you get the problem solved. See, I realized that about myself. And about a few years ago, somebody was kind of praying for me about 35 years ago and saying, oh, you can't put those conditions on God. Because I was almost saying, until this is solved, I can't really be happy. And he was saying, well, you have to either way be happy in essence. And that's what I'm telling you. I found if I would have waited, I'm going to be 70 next year. If I would have waited till everything was all right, I'd never choose to be happy. And that's what I was telling another person, that this person, don't stay in that room kind of stubbornly. This person has trouble with perfection, the wrong kind of perfectionism. And I was saying, no, just get out into those other rooms, or else a perfect time will never come. I see Paul and Kathy taking a little drive or walk right here as I have a little meeting with you. And sometimes that happens around here. As I go off to talk to you, I'll see somebody taking a walk or using a one-wheel device. Do you ever see what a one-wheel is? It's like a skateboard with one wheel, and it's GPS controlled. Our guys use those to move things around the land, even to carry big things. They use those on weddings too. They use those. They actually can carry delicate cameras and circle the bride. I'm not giving a commercial for, our Orange Photo and Cinema, but we do cover weddings. But I just wanted to say that, well, even the weddings that they do it in a very joyful way. They not only just cover it technically, and they do a great job with their equipment, but even all their other jobs, like our court reporting business, and we do cover depositions for lawyers and trials. They will bring us a little extra something, a lightness, a joy, a love. Sometimes they'll give a drive the person to the airport. You know what happened the other day? A very sophisticated trial one of my sons was involved in. One of the attorneys fell over and had like a seizure. And not only did they show concern, one of my sons prayed over him in the job. Suddenly you go from a very kind of strict, sophisticated legal setting in which our job is to cover the trial tech, they call it, to a Christian being allowed to show something. So we should always be ready to, going back to my point, you may not have something that dramatic happen to you today, but you can make hourly differences. Like even when somebody writes a message in our comments section, or even says, this video meant a lot to me. Well, that encourages me to keep going. It's like those kind of misting machines that you go to, like an amusement park in the summer. We have a Six Flags about 45 minutes away, and they have those misting devices. They used to anyway. On a hot day, you get refreshed. Well, you can refresh people no matter who you are, no matter where. If you work somewhere, if you work at a retail store, if you're in a lot of people are in healthcare, or if you're at home, or you're a homemaker, or you're a grandma, you can make your little part of the world fresh, joyful, a little slice of heaven. That's one reason I like to come to this little corner of the woods. See these big mature trees? It's to me a little slice of heaven. You can hear the birds singing out there. Kathy and Paul just dropped by. And when we talk about these things, it makes it feel a little closer, makes me feel a little closer to heaven. And after I get finished with a session like this, especially doing a video, I start to feel like, hey, it's harder to be depressed. You know what I do as a secret? When I'm facing something on the calendar that bothers me, or I'm worried about, nervous about, I'll purposely plow into it with extra joy and faith and expectations. I'll even I had to do something recently, go to an event when I was very short on rest. It was a long drive to get there, and I had to get up early. And I knew that my flesh and just not wanting to do it could drag me down. So I purposely entered it with ahead of time planning what I was going to do. I said, well, even though I don't want to really be there, it kind of similar would be when I had to go in the past, when I was a court reporter, our state made you have to go to a 10-hour every year. You got to go one Saturday when I really needed to provide for my family and do my work on my computer. I had to go drive pretty far sometimes to go to like a continuing education thing, 10 hours of lectures. And I would plan ahead to not go crazy, especially as a man. I mean, the women would love those things because they would chatter and giggle between I'm not stereotyping women, but I like women to be that way. Kathy's that way and happy. They're different from men. But I just thought, man, I wanted to go home and provide for my family. So I had to plan ahead things I could do during the 10 hours. Because thankfully I was allowed to jot in a notebook. There weren't even phones back then, I don't think. It was like the day of the dinosaur era, no phones. And I would just write out things like I had to figure out. I would make a pro and con. And it helped me get through. And maybe this other day when I had to go somewhere, I knew I had to be there for hours. It's a long drive. I wish the cup could have passed. I decided ahead of time, I'm going to just thank God. I'm going to purposely see if I can thank God for a whole lot of things. So while I was going through it, I thought I still have my mind to myself. No one can take that away from me. And just like prisoners or people who were in dungeons for being a Christian, nobody could take their minds away from them. And so I just learned from reading those testimonies about people in severe situations being imprisoned as Christians that they said, nobody could stop me from talking to God in prison, just like Paul and Silas in Acts of the Apostles. So I actually, it helped me because even though I physically was there, I was able to, it was fun to be able to go through the thank you game. That thank you habit started in about 1982 or 1981 when I was working in a factory just to make it through until I could work to finish my schooling. And it was a factory in which sometimes for 9 hours, and you weren't supposed to talk, it was like punch clock, 9 hours, 5 in the morning from 7 a.m. to noon, and from in the afternoon 12:30 to 4:30, and just without it talking, just punch parts into a machine over and over, and put it in a tray and put another part. And it was really a blessing to have the job. My father-in-law ran a factory, and he carried me through the schooling. Thank God to him, my late father-in-law. But my mind was so used to being creative, and I was a newspaper editor before that. And I had written books about Christian athletes, and I had all sorts of neat things spoken at churches. This was a shock to me. It was like I didn't know how to use my mind for 9 hours because just plugging the parts in a machine. So I began to just institute the thank you game, and I began to count. I said, I wonder if I could just literally count my blessings, and it entertained my mind and kind of made me feel alive. So I reached over, I don't know, a year and a half, I don't know, 2 years, I reached 30,000. And that's not even trying. I would just do it every once in a while. And so over the years, it changed my brain paths where ever since then, for almost 44 years, I've been, whatever it is, 42, 44, I've been thanking God purposely, filling my thoughts with things that are good and true and hopeful. And I started up, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I don't know when, 2-3 years ago again. I think I'll start actually counting it again. And I'll write it down. So I have a little department on a note file on my phone, and I think I'm up to 51,000 in this latest run. And I mean, if I were literally to thank God for everything, it would be 50,000 a week. I'm sure for you too. But I just made a decision to be a thankful person. It's really important for moms, dads, grandpas, grandmothers, aunts, uncles, and even kids to be that way. I'm just starting up the car here. Is there anything else that you would like to ask about this subject? Feel free to put it in the comments area. And one favor for me, you could really lift my spirits if you would just pray that God would make this little room, the safe at home area, thrive. And you can even help out by sending it, or if you haven't subscribed, to subscribe, because it's just a labor of love. And we carve out time to do it. It blesses me as much as it blesses you, because it forces me to sort of exercise these things. And I wouldn't normally just sit here by myself and talk about these things. So thanks for being a sounding board and for gathering 2 or more gathered in his name, because wherever we do that in Jesus' name, he is there. Thank you. We love you.